The vigil, dusk of the passing. The record of his departure truly begins at dusk, that exact heartbeat when his lungs went still and the shadow of the canyons seemed to reclaim him. Before the state arrived, with its iron and gold, the clergy emerged from the mountain mist. They were silent figures, moving with the rhythm of the wind, their low, vibrating chants acting as a spiritual anchor for his safe passage into heaven. I remember the thin trails of incense smoke. They were the first threads of a bridge being built to ensure his journey was as secure as the walls of our city. The first morning was a quiet, unadorned thing. The state banners remained furled, and the gates to the Iron Throat stayed closed to the world. This time was dedicated solely to his family and the specific team that had shared his blood and his bread. It was the only moment of the 3 days that belonged to the man himself rather than the monument he was becoming. We allowed the silence to hold the weight of their private words, the ones that are never etched into nodite iron. On the second day, the private grief was replaced by a collective, disciplined rhythm. The military took the ridge, a sea of forest green and crimson, their boots striking the basalt stones with the precision of a clockwork machine. It was a day of iron-clad salutes and rigid ceremony, where he was formally recognized as the gravity that held the House of Duty together. By the third morning, the sheer scale of the gathering had broken the kingdom's legendary backlog. In a land where families often wait months for a burial slot, he was moved to the front not because of his rank, but because of what he meant to the thousands who now lined the cliffs. I looked at those hooded figures, and I finally understood. They hadn't gathered simply to salute a man of war. I realized that it is because of men like him that the kingdom still stands. Because of the shield he provided and the ground he held, hundreds, if not thousands, in that canyon still draw breath. They live to tell his tale because he ensured there was a tale left to tell. Through that final night, a detail of mythic minotaurs, bearded, wise warrior monks in military tunics was assigned to the final watch. They stood as motionless as the cliffs they guarded, their right shoulders bearing the bull sigil that gleamed under the orange pulse of the road's Magitech veins. The memory of that journey is etched in a light that the kingdom hadn't seen for generations. As the procession climbed away from the industrial smoke of the Iron Throat, the very world seemed to exhale. The heavy, suffocating fog that had defined our lives for so long didn't just drift, it crawled back into the dark crevices of the canyons, retreating like a defeated army. The lifting of the veil, the clearing of the sky was the first true evidence of what he had achieved. For years, the gatekeeper had sat at the threshold of the abyss, its presence acting as a physical weight that kept the heavens hidden behind a shroud of grey. By eliminating that sentinel, he did more than just win a battle, he tore down a curtain. For the first time, we saw the moon in its full, silvered glory, hanging like a crown directly over the distant world spire. Above it, the sky was a tapestry of 1,000,000 stars, a celestial map that felt as if it were welcoming him home. It was in that moment, looking up at the clarity of the night, that I realized why the thousands had lined the cliffs. They weren't just there for a ceremony, they were there because they could finally breathe. Hundreds, if not thousands, still draw breath and live to tell his tale, specifically because he stood where no one else would. Much of what we know about the gates is built on a foundation of theories and fevered speculation. Some say they are literal portals to the abyss. Others believe they are mirrors of our own collective soul. While the scholars argue, the truth felt by the people is rarely far off. His final, staggering act of heroics did more than defeat a monster, it sealed the gate. There is a pervasive understanding now, whispered among the clergy and the workers alike. The seal is not a physical lock, but a moral one. The theories suggest that as long as the people remain anchored in their diligence and refrain from the sins that once fueled the gate's hunger, that seal could remain unbroken for years, perhaps decades. He bought us time a rare and precious currency in this world, and the clear sky above was the receipt for that sacrifice. The terrain began to shift as we reached the high plateaus. The wet basalt hexagons of the lower roads gave way to vast stretches of obsidian and silver-veined quartz. Under the full moon, the ground shimmered like a frozen sea. The 10-foot-wide State Saison looked like a vessel made of moonlight and shadow. The black iron of its frame absorbed the darkness, while the gold Spanish Damascening filigree caught the lunar glow, making the words Nemo Relinquitur pulse with a soft internal fire. Inside, the two caskets remained side by side, a silent pact of brotherhood finally visible in the sharp, silver clarity of the night. Father Philip and the Superior sat on the wide front bench, their silhouettes sharp against the stars. They looked less like mourners and more like navigators guiding a ship through a celestial ocean. The journey begins with the stag of the first pillar, a moose-sized, translucent gold silhouette that hums with an ancient, silvery light. It draws the matte black state carriage, its gears etched with nodite iron and intricate Spanish Damascening. Behind it, the four banners of the wolf, ram, lion, and bull snap in the cold wind, a rare display of unity for a man who died defending it. As the procession passes the old stone chapel and steps onto the pristine emerald grass of the cemetery, a heavy silence falls that no magitech can fill. Here, the first truth of the kingdom is felt, that faith without steel is a death sentence. Without the nodite armor discovered by KL, humanity would be dust. But as they pass the church, the second truth follows, that steel without faith will only delay, for while the blade may kill the demon, only the pillars keep the soul from becoming one. At the grave, the mythic guard take their positions, standing in a perfect, cold circle around the 10-foot-wide, nodite iron casket, their eyes concealed by the shadows of their covers. As the officer's blade is raised to the overcast sky, a single torch is lit, a moment of pure diligence and integrity before the soul is returned to eternity. Then the perspective begins its ascent into a tiny point of light under the hazy shadow of the world's spire. The horizon reveals the final, crushing truth, that even having both steel and faith still requires one's very soul. Thousands of acres stretch out in an endless grid, marked by millions of flickering torches that look like dying embers in the encroaching dark. This is the night shift's ledger, a sea of souls spent just to buy a single dawn. Returning to the earth, the mythic guard carry Brother Hant toward his final watch, but as the camera pans, we see another flag, a vibrant green banner descending a hill in the far distance. Another party, from another kingdom, is performing the exact same ritual. The cycle is constant. Brother Hant is at rest, but across the realm, the march continues.